Hello everyone. This is the 23rd part of the story, Avatar in DC Universe. Chapter 69, We Meet Again Part 2. Aden's Point of View. The sound of the boom tube suddenly disappeared along with the yellow portal. I still didn't completely understand how the damn thing worked despite being connected so deeply with the dimension itself. I understood the bare facts, which were, I had access to all the functions of the father box through the link between the elemental dimension and I. However, due to the father box being alien tech in nature, actually reverse engineering that tech or even intuiting the way it worked was beyond me. So I resolved to simply enjoy the benefits and cease the complaints. LA, home sweet home. I looked around and found myself in an alley, behind Club Lux. I took a deep breath and immediately regretted as my nose was assaulted by the pungent smell of the trash and other paraphernalia, making the alley their home. Though to be fair, it was much cleaner when compared to last time. A change in management, I suppose. Despite my current location, I smiled. It might not have been my LA, but goddamn if I didn't miss it. Maybe I could move here after I was done saving the world. Unfortunately or fortunately, Eldare wasn't prominent in the Cape scene, so I couldn't set up a base of operations here. I started walking towards the back room, recalling the entrance I had used to access the building the first time. Ah, things used to be so simple then. No drama, no team betrayals. I was almost optimistic about my stay here in the DC-verse. Then shit hit the fan. The fight with Clarion, who I had no doubt was itching for some payback, the Yellowstone mission going off the rails so completely, the presence of a father box which derailed canon to the point I had no idea what would happen next. Sigh. I wish I was in Marvel. At least there, the massive info I had about canon would let me make contingencies upon contingencies for anything going wrong. In comparison, I was almost stumbling in the dark here even with the meta-knowledge I had. My hand reached out to push open the door. At that instant, something registered in my passive air sense. I cocked my head to the side just in time to avoid a very familiar dagger from digging a hole at the back of my noggin. I narrowed my eyes as the dagger trembled and shot out of the hole, going back to where it had come from initially. I turned around and deadpanned. If that's how you greet people, then I'm scared for anyone who manages to grab your attention. A walking sin stalked out of the shadows, looking so sexy, my heart almost skipped a beat. Maze smirked, seeing the look of barely suppressed lust flash in my eyes before I steeled my will enough to cage the beast once more. Man, I need a girlfriend. You survived, she observed. I must be getting rusty, Maze added, stopping right before me. I had gained a few more inches on her, emphasizing the height difference between us even more. However, that didn't mean shit with the way that curved dagger gleamed in the moonlight. I doubt even my hardened skin could stop the dagger from slicing me. Or maybe, I'm just getting better. I shot back playfully. Maze cocked her hip to the side and ran her eyes up and down my body. I felt a shiver across my spine as she observed me like a predator. Maybe. I love the costume, by the way. It screams, I'm trying to be stealthy but miserably failing. Ouch. That sarcastic tone. Really? I acted dumb. Thanks. Although I'm thinking of trading up to something a bit more colorful. My response was filled with forced cheer. It was clear I was overdoing it. Especially when she snorted and pushed past me, muttering. Annoying. I smirked and followed her, my eyes falling down to her leather-clad ass. Damn, that ass was tight. Eyes up, kid. That's too R-rated for you, she quipped while shooting me a look over the shoulder. The slight smile of pride on her lips told me that she didn't mind I was ogling her one bit. I shook my head and followed her. Maze pushed the door open and instantly loud music started playing from the club above. I looked at the door leading to the basement where Galil had been hosting his own version of Fight Club and winced. That place had been nasty. Even the aura surrounding it was too sinister. There was a plaque on the door saying, "Undergoing renovations." I spared one last look at it and followed Maze to the elevator. The elevator doors closed and we started going up. All things considered, it was a short ride. I was silent throughout, my heart hammering in my chest as I asked myself if it was too late to call it quits and just leave. There were more ways to get what I wanted. I sighed. Who am I kidding? Those ways would take up a lot more time and I would be grasping at straws. I needed Lucifer's help, and based on the fact that Maze had been waiting for me, it was apparent that he was eager to meet me. Ditching now would risk the wrath of a multiversal entity. The elevator doors opened and I found myself in an opulent and grand nightclub. Maze and I were walking along the VIP lounge while staring down at the moving bodies down below. The music was loud, the ceiling was covered with flashing lights and the bar was full. Seems like business is booming. I shouted at Maze over the noise. It is. She replied. Come on. He's waiting for you. She pointed out and increased the pace. We made our way towards a door at the end of the doorway that was suspiciously left alone by the partying crowd. The blur effect it left in my senses when I didn't focus on it was probably the cause. Near the door was a staircase leading to the VIP section from below. At the foot of the staircase, 2 bouncers stood looking intimidating. I raised an eyebrow. From what I'd seen so far, this version of Lux was different from the glimpses of the one I'd seen on screen in Lucifer's TV show. Then again, this Lucifer was more of a mashup between his comic counterpart and the TV one. There are bound to be differences. I caught up with Maze, just as she pushed the door open. Hey, what's up with this door? If you don't focus on it, it seems to sort of blend into the wall. Glamour charm. Humans are too nosy for their own good. She explained in a slightly hard tone. There was more to that story than she was letting on. We took a staircase up and arrived before another door. Maze pushed it open and instantly, I felt a pressure wash over my skin. I took a few steadying deep breaths and made contact with Maze's eyes. An amused look came onto her face. She gestured to the open door. After you. I couldn't muster an appropriate comeback, so I swallowed my nervousness and stepped through. I felt as if I was a lamb willingly going into a slaughterhouse. The penthouse was massive and very well decorated. There was a wide window that showed the outside view of the L. A nightlife and soft jazz music was playing. Standing before the window, looking out into the city, was Lucifer himself. There was a half-empty glass of wine on his hand, while the other hand was inside his trouser pocket in a relaxed pose. You know, there's just something intriguing about seeing you humans go about your fleeting lives with such zeal. You cheat, deceive, hate, love, help, comfort, and although at the end of it all, you still feel the cold embrace of death, a mark is left on the world. As inconsequential, weak, and ultimately worthless as you are, you have us beat in one thing: living. I soaked in the words, mulling them inside my head, and ultimately came to the conclusion that although there was merit to what he was saying, I didn't really care. Not when I was standing before someone who could swat me like a fly. My mind was too preoccupied to discuss philosophy. My only thought was on one thing and one thing only. How could I convince the devil to help me? He seemed to like me, but I wouldn't allow myself to be fooled. No matter how charming and welcoming he looked, I couldn't forget who I was dealing with. I couldn't let my guard down. The king of hell turned to me. His eyes roamed up and down my body, but the feeling I got out of him was assessment. He was assessing me for something. MMH. He hummed. You're not quite there, but I see you have grown stronger. Wouldn't you say so, Maze? He addressed the sexy Lilim in the room with us. Maze snorted while making eye contact with me. He's all right. Saying that, she went back to cleaning her dagger with a cloth. Lucifer placed his wine glass on a table beside him and walked up to me. The easy smile on his face did not put me at ease. He placed his hand on my shoulder. You haven't said anything. Are you not happy to see me? I thought we were friends. His voice sounded aggrieved yet amused at the same time. Friends? Dude, you could destroy me with a sneeze. No, scratch that, with a thought. The difference in power, especially now that I know the true reality of this world is skewed in your favor, it's not even funny. Still, it's no reason to be rude. Sorry, I was just out of it for a few seconds. So how are you and, how's Eldare treating you, Lucifer? Somehow I managed to speak up, despite my mouth feeling drier than sandpaper. It's been fabulous, thank you. Where are my manners? Please, have a seat. He motioned to one of the couches in the penthouse. I did as asked and allowed my body to sink onto the comfortable cushion. Lucifer took the couch opposite me and crossed his legs while looking at me with interest. Can Maze get you anything? I spared a glance at the Lilim in question, who was staring daggers in my direction, and wisely shook my head. No, I'm good thanks. I responded. A brief silence fell between us. Lucifer looked content to let me speak first. I tightened my hands into fists and looked at him dead in the eye. I've come to bargain. The smile on his face widened. Delightful. But before we get to that, there's something I need you to do for me first. A pest problem that I want dealt with. Chapter 70, Aden Strong, Pest Control. General point of view. Still don't get what's so important about this guy. I bet we could take him. Hell, I bet you could take him out if you wanted to, Hook. Despite your superpower being, you're a good cosplayer. Black Spider whispered to his partner. The two were perched on the roof of the building across the one housing Club Lux. Black Spider was a man dressed in a fully black suit that was heavily inspired from a certain web-slinging hero, popular from the studio next door, Spider-Man. Even his powers were similar, but the difference between the two was that Black Spider was a merc and a supervillain. His companion was someone who had had an encounter with Aden before. Both of them had actually. Hook was a merc with a hook for a hand, that's it. Granted, he was deadly, able to go up against the team, and possessed some useful functions in his prosthetic hook arm. Useful functions that culminated into one ability. The hook was attached to a chain and could be shot at enemies. Yeah. Super cool ability, that one. Hook grunted, letting the insult wash over him, and kept silent. His gaze was fully trained on the window of the penthouse. Their job was to observe and report any developments while their last companion scouted the premise for entry points. Hook was regretting getting left behind with Black Spider. The guy didn't shut up. And that's why I think missions like these should be carried out by the grunts, you know? We're mid-tier at worst, but the demon's head is using us as low-tier assassins. It's frankly insulting. A sigh appeared on Black Spider's neck without warning. Cheshire's familiar mask materialized out of the shadows behind the spider merc. Be very careful of what comes out of your mouth next, she said, menacingly. Hook tensed minutely while Black Spider shivered in fear. Whoa, Jade. Calm the fuck down, I was just messing around. The sigh in Jade's hands stabbed a little into Black Spider's neck. The taller man's heart hammered in his ears. This wasn't the first time he'd been so close to death before, but the bloodlust pouring off Cheshire in waves told him that one wrong move and he was off to meet his maker. Sorry. I apologize for my disrespect of the demon's head, Cheshire. Please spare my life. The words burned coming out of his mouth, but luckily it was the right move, as Cheshire simply shoved him away. Count yourself lucky that this mission is so sensitive and we cannot afford to leave a trace of our presence. Cheshire pushed past him to crouch next to Hook. Otherwise, your cold corpse would be left rotting on this roof. She told him and ignored him. Any changes? She asked Hook, while pressing a finger on the side of her mask. Her vision was magnified underneath it, greatly allowing her to see their priority targets form, staring out through the window. The man was otherworldly beautiful. And for the umpteenth time, Cheshire found herself tongue-tied by his good looks. It was unnatural. Negative. Hook grunted. Cheshire nodded and resolved to wait a few more hours before they moved in. As if sensing her gaze, the man she was observing made contact with her eyes and smiled. Cheshire hit her shock with practiced ease, but the tension in her shoulders did not go unnoticed by the other two. "What happened, boss?" Black Spider asked from his crouched position. Hook readied his hook while expecting trouble. Cheshire ignored both of them and switched to thermal imaging on her mask. Instantly, she could detect 2 more heat signatures inside the penthouse, just out of view of the window. Her brows furrowed underneath the white mask and she tightened her hold on the sais. "We've been made," she softly but clearly informed the two. "What? How?" Black Spider questioned in disbelief. His voice had changed from the lazy tone of before to a veteran professional's. The distance between the club and where they were positioned, while not particularly large, was nothing to scoff at. Especially due to the higher vantage point that made observing the penthouse easy but vice versa hard. Plus, say what you will about their personal quirks, but they were all trained professional assassins. If they did not want to be seen, they wouldn't be seen. "We fall back. For the time being at least. A round sweep of the place and then we double back after confusing the enemies with false trails. Hook, you take the south." Cheshire's words were cut off suddenly when the door on the roof of the building they were observing opened. She held up her hand to silence her colleagues and magnified her vision. Instantly, a sinking feeling made itself known inside her. "Oh crap," she muttered. The mission had just gone from a simple observe to a full-on battle. And it was with this guy. The jacked aerokinetic in Artemis team. It really was time to fall back. They couldn't take him down and still remain hidden, compromising the first objective of the entire mission. What the fuck was he even doing here? Was the Kitty team around too? "We've got company. Batman's little Black Ops team. Though I've only got sights on Maelstrom. Keep a lookout for the rest," she informed Hook and Black Spider. "Those little shits are here. What are they doing in L.A.?" Black Spider inquired. He was still mad from the way they had failed the Rocket mission. The team had made them look bad. And disappointing the light was not something smart. Especially if you had a repeat performance. In this game, rep was everything. Cheshire stared at Maelstrom for a few seconds as he watched his surroundings, and then without warning, his visor turned to stare towards them. A yellow flame exploded out of his feet as he shot off towards them in crazy speeds. The ground behind him was left cracked due to the heat and force generated from the move. Since when could he do that? His abilities were supposed to be aerokinesis. "We're outta here." 3 smoke bombs appeared in between Cheshire's fingers. She slammed them onto the roof and flipped over a static vent, headed towards the edge of the building. They had a good escape strategy, her using Black Spider's web to hitch a ride with him while Hook would swing on his weapon. And then they would rendezvous and come up with a follow-up plan. After giving an update to Ra's al Ghul, of course. Cheshire knew he wouldn't be pleased, but for now, she elected to leave rather than get into a fight with the Junior Justice League team. An extended conflict would just lead to their target getting more information on who was after him. Before the 3 of them could reach the edge of the building and jump over, something landed right before them. She felt a brief surge of heat following the impact and ducked behind an air conditioning unit. Hook, on the other hand, shouted and sped forward to attack. The large Caucasian man's right hand pulled back and thrust off towards Maelstrom. The hook left the former's hand while attached to a chain, aimed at the latter. Maelstrom settled into a low position while staring at the incoming attack. His senses were hyper-aware of his surroundings. Focused on the real threats. The ones that would attack from the shadows. He leaned his body to the side, allowing the hook to miss and overextend. Maelstrom then reached out with his right hand and grabbed the chain. Using his superior strength, the young superpowered teen torqued in place, pulling an unsuspecting Hook towards him. A fist landed on the jaw of the older man, breaking it and slamming his body on the gravel-covered roof of the building. Hook passed out within seconds. Maelstrom looked up and muttered, "Who's next?" A hail of kunai and shuriken shot out of the darkened roof towards him. He ducked and weaved through the metallic storm while running forwards, towards where they were coming from. He jumped and while in mid-air, spinned and kicked out. A blast of fire jutted out of his foot. The flame blast destroyed the air conditioning units, sending pieces of metal, burning plastic and flashing circuitry flying away. Cheshire rolled out of the way and strafed along Maelstrom's left side, with her sais in hand, looking for an opening. An opening she was soon enough given when red webbing grabbed onto the chassis of the destroyed air conditioning unit and threw it towards their opponent, courtesy of Black Spider. The lady assassin immediately ran forward using the cover of the metallic projectile to hide her actions. Cheshire had already figured out that Maelstrom was alone, so her hope that maybe they wouldn't lose was ignited again. And then it was brutally shattered. Maelstrom took a step forward and slashed the chassis apart using a swirling flame covering his palm and wrist. His palm snaked out quicker than Cheshire could react to and grabbed her neck. Jade slammed her feet onto his chest, aiming to use the force and maneuver out of the hold only to fail. Fuck. Her feet felt as if they had slammed onto a concrete wall and lost. Her vision started blurring around the edges as the hand on her neck tightened. Shock and fear warred inside her. How was he this strong? Not to mention, he was way brutal than their last encounter. The look on his face, from the little she could see, was calm if a bit sour. He didn't like what he was doing, but he would do it regardless. Cheshire refused to be taken in. Her eyes flashed with a cold light inside the mask as she twirled the sais in her hands, before trying to stab them on his neck. Stop. Cheshire closed her eyes and ears in pain as that one word disoriented her. Her brain started feeling sluggish and she couldn't focus on what was happening. Maelstrom had used a sonic blast at close range to stop her actions. The latter then spun out of the way of a double kick and through Cheshire's body to collide with Black Spider who had swung towards him from the water tank above head. The two assassins ragdolled on the ground full of pebbles before stopping right next to their other member, Hook, who was still passed out. Black Spider tried to get up but Maelstrom slowly walked forward and slammed a fist on the back of his head. The spider-themed mercenary passed out, slumping back to the ground. Maelstrom shrugged. He'll probably be fine, he muttered, thinking of how he would get back to the next building with all three captives in tow. His gaze lingered on Cheshire a bit before he shook his head in regret. There was nothing he could do about it. Wouldn't pay to keep the devil waiting, though. Chapter 71, I had hoped it wouldn't be you. Aden's point of view. I bit the bullet and used my airbending to construct an air platform to carry the three assassins back to Club Lux with me. I used the cover of the night to fly straight towards the window of the penthouse as opposed to going in the way I came out. All those flight of stairs were annoying. I came upon the window and inside the room, saw Lucifer seating on the couch with closed eyes, hands spread out along the length of the purple couch, enjoying the slow rhythm of classical music. Maze, on the other hand, was nursing a drink on the private bar on the far end of the room. She saw me and what I was carrying and promptly gave me the middle finger. I raised an eyebrow at that. PSSH, jealous bitch. Back to the Morningstar, a few minutes ago, jazz was playing and now it was classical music. Guess the devil loves variety. I felt like chuckling at the image of Lucifer doing the Dougie at the backdrop of Teach Me How to Dougie. I quickly sobered up after recalling who I was dealing with. Dude can turn your skin inside out with a mere pinky wave, Aden. Pick your fights wisely, I advised myself. I reached out a hand to push open the panel when the glass making up the window rippled like a thin film of water, allowing the limb to plunge through the surface. I spared a glance at Lucy, who was still vibing to some Mozart, and shrugged. Never look a gift horse in the mouth. I flew through the window and stepped onto the floor of the penthouse. Points for the unorthodox entry. Lucifer chuckled while sitting up straighter. His eyes ran over the League of Shadows agents I had floating behind me. Thank you for allowing it. I come bearing gifts. The air construct carrying them slowly pushed forward. Maze sprang from her seat and walked up to us while twirling her daggers in anticipation. The construct unraveled and Cheshire, Hook and Black Spider were unceremoniously dumped on the floor. "I'll give it to you, kid. You didn't take too long, so well done," Maze complimented, making me gasp in mock surprise. "Holy cow, did you just say something nice?" Lucifer laughed at the comment while the Lilim gave me a stink eye. She turned to Lucifer, ignoring me. "Looks like he got them all. These three are the ones I was sensing." Lucifer hummed in response and crouched to study them. He snapped a finger and the sound left echoes ringing for a few seconds throughout the room. I felt something spread out and in an eerie unison, the three assassins all got up. I took a step back, warily. Maze spared me a glance at the action but chose to keep quiet. I frowned at the unnerving way their bodies stayed motionless in place. Like statues carved standing ramrod straight and still. It was creepy. Lucifer walked around them in curiosity before he made it back to his previous position in front of Cheshire and the others. He turned to me. "You seem to be familiar with them." I nodded at his observation. "Yes. My team." I paused and corrected myself. Previous team and I had an encounter with all three of them during a past mission. The girl is known as Cheshire, the guy with the hook, and the last one is Black Spider. They work for an organization called the League of Shadows. I explained. "Intriguing," Lucifer commented while stepping up closer to Cheshire. He reached out and lightly grabbed her chin, turning her gaze to lock onto him. "Tell me, what is it you desire?" His charming voice left goosebumps on my skin due to the subtle hint of power it contained. I leaned in, curious about what her answer would be while noting absent-mindedly just how useful this ability was. Knowing your enemy's deepest desire would give you a chance to come up with a good strategy to defeat them. Without pause, Cheshire answered. "To be the best at what I do. Better than my father ever could." Her voice was blank and neutral. "Makes sense, I suppose." Cheshire's dad was Sportsmaster, who also happened to be a strangely good merc. His skills and equipments were sport-themed, hence the moniker, Sportsmaster. Upon giving her answer, Maze snorted. "Oh, look at that, someone else with daddy issues." She laughed. Lucifer rolled his eyes at the slight jab and turned to Black Spider, who was standing motionless on Cheshire's left. "And what about you, Spider-Man? What is your deepest desire?" My eyes widened a little at the nickname Lucifer had given Black Spider. Was it intentional or not? I immediately evaluated who I was dealing with again. This is a multiversal entity. Why am I still surprised at everything he does or says? Lucifer glanced over at me as if sensing my inner turmoil and winked. I blinked. My thoughts were thankfully interrupted by Black Spider's predictable yet surprisingly fitting response. "I want to feel the rush of free fall while swinging from the city forever. To never be weak again. To forever be strong." A predatory smile made its way to the devil's face. "Is that all?" "I doubt it. What else do you desire?" Lucy's voice was tempting and silky smooth. Even I felt like telling him all my deepest desires. The words were just at the tip of my tongue, waiting for me to go over the edge. To give in. With a will belonging to the gods, I overcame the feeling. Maze smirked at me, a little happy at my discomfort. "Sadistic bitch. I want to grab Talia al Ghul's sexy ass and eat." Black Spider stammered out. For a minute I thought he was joking before realizing he possibly couldn't have been. Lucifer's power was absolute. At least on mortals. I think. "Okay, that's enough, Spidey. Keep it strictly PG-13, we have a child in the room." The archangel in question patted Black Spider's shoulder, while I spared an "Are you serious?" look at Maze, who was dying of laughter. I looked at the dark-skinned beauty and promised retribution with my eyes. My attention went back to the King of Hell. So far, everything had been very educational. An idea on a super powerful skill I could create was blooming inside my head, and I wanted to see more of the Lightbringer's desire exhibition power to form an outline of what I wanted. If I was successful, then most of my plans would go much more smoothly. However, Lucifer simply turned and went to sit back on his couch without asking what Hook's deepest desire was. Aren't you forgetting something? I tentatively asked, motioning not so subtly at the tall Caucasian male on Cheshire's right. Okay, I admit it. I was curious, scratch that. Very curious to know what motivated the Captain Hook rip-off. Lucifer merely crossed his legs and leaned back while taking a sip from the drink on his half-full glass. He shrugged while running a not-so-impressed look over Hook. I know the type. It's all standard fare. Money, power, and recognition. Nothing interesting or noteworthy. Just like 90% of everyday humans. Wow. I wonder where I belong. Is it with the normal 90% or the noteworthy 10%? You're wondering what your deepest desire is. Lucifer observed casually with a knowing look. Maze snorted absent-mindedly while caressing her curved dagger. Trust me, kid. That's a slippery slope. You might find out, you're not special at all and selfish just like the rest of us. Not worth it. She warned, already anticipating what my next statement would be. A request for Lucifer to use his desire exhibition on me. I knew what I needed to do, of course. What I was working towards. I guess what I sought was validation from my innermost self that it was also what I desired. Hearing Maze's warning, however, put everything back to perspective. I didn't know if I was ready to hear it. The woman in question managed to grab my attention when she started stalking towards Cheshire with this bloodthirsty look on her face. My mouth opened as I found out what she wanted to do. Her specialty was torture. Of the hell kind. Yikes. I doubt anyone would come out sane after a few sessions with her. And despite the fact that these guys were super annoying murderers, they weren't the worst out there. Well, except for Black Spider. The feeling I got from him was that of someone who enjoyed killing and fighting as part of the adrenaline rush he sought out. However, the other two, while still everything wrong with the world, were comparatively less murder hobos than the Spider Merc. I had decided when I started out that I would have a code. No mercy for the scum of the world, but no senseless killing either. Not when I didn't give someone the chance to quit or stop before I took them down. Despite the fact it would be much easier to just kill them and be done with it, things would get much more complicated if I took the easier approach. Fuck. The truth was, I didn't want Artemis to lose her sister. It was frustrating as hell to see I was still a selfish prick. Even after all that had gone down, I still cared for them. I closed my eyes and made a promise, never to let my emotions get in the way. Just this one time. I stepped between the three assassins and Maze. The latter did not look happy. What are you doing, boy? Offering yourself up as a substitute? I barked out a laugh. For these guys? They wouldn't afford my services. I joked. Maze did not look to be in a kidding mood. I cleared my throat and a serious look appeared on my face. Just hear me out. You can't kill them. There's a high possibility that they could be a big help in taking down the shadows. She cocked her head to the side, looking at me as if I was an idiot. I'm not going to kill them. Not before they tell me what they know. The information they give me will more than help you in taking them down if you want. I just need a few minutes with them. Now step out of my way. I winced. See, that's what I'm afraid of. A few minutes with you, they will end up crazy and useless. Maze clenched her jaw. Move. She ordered, looking ready to go through me if I didn't. Number. I stubbornly said, getting ready for a fight. What the fuck am I doing? Children. Settle down, will you? Besides, their pickup is here. Maze and I turned to Lucifer in confusion. What was he talking about? A purple boom tube portal appeared inside the room. The energy felt eerily familiar to me. The avatar state inside me stirred before settling down, as if reacting to something. From within the portal, a man stepped out. My eyes widened. This guy? Vandal Savage looked around before fully coming out of the portal. The next figure to step out was the one who caught my attention immediately. One of the Terror Twins, Tommy, who had disappeared suddenly with his sister after attempting to attack Metropolis, followed behind Savage. But he was different. His eyes had a purple tint in them and his aura and general vibe felt off. He cocked his head to the side and stared intently at me. The answer came to me almost immediately: the father box. I gulped. What in the hell? Fuck. Vandal Savage's voice pulled me out of my thoughts. His gaze was stuck on Lucifer. It was clear he was hiding his fear pretty well. I had hoped it wouldn't be you, he said to the Archangel. This marks the end of part 23 of the story, Avatar in DC Universe. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.